Alright, these cards are ruining Yu-Gi-Oh! Type 1 if you think Baron and Apollosa and Savage should all be banned, no exceptions.
What is the point of building new archetypes when the best way to play them is to vomit out the same 4 to 5 boss monsters and call it a day? If you look.
Well, that right there is a freaking statement. That is an introduction to a video. This man is here for blood. Like, that is... That's putting the foot down, you know? You just show the most egregious examples of these decks in the history of this game, which is Super Heavy Samurai and Adamancipator. And you just say, like, you know what? These decks, basically, they are just reskins of one another. They do the exact same shit. They spit out and they piss on the field a bunch of crazy, insane boss monsters. And that is basically every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, combo deck for the last, like, you know, however long since we've had Link monsters, basically. You're still ending on... Low-key, I want to see Masquerena banned. Low-key, hot take, nuclear take, maybe potentially. On top of that further, I want to see Masquerena banned as well. Anyway, let's continue though. That psychotic takes aside, let's move on.
Look at the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the last 5-ish years.
No, dude, can I don't want to be focused on... The only people who are against this are the Coomers. 100% if Masquerena wasn't a woman, people would be saying, like, that card should be banned. I promise you. It is just coon-brain opinion that wants Masquerena to stay. If Masquerena was not a woman, people would say Mask should be banned. I want you to, like, think about the card Masquerena. Think about what it does and how broken it is, right? Now, I want you to picture the artwork of Dark Geroid. Okay? I want you to think about Dark Geroid. I want you to think of, like, you know, some stupid, like, random Tindangle monster. Now I want you to ask you again. Think about it. Do you still want that card in the game? Do you stop saying would?
I feel like we are just playing the same old song and dance until the generic pieces we use are either banned or power crept. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no...
Can't believe Tri-Gate Wizard is power crept. Is Tri-Gate Wizard power crept? I don't think Tri-Gate Wizard is power crept. It's just very specific and niche. U-linking never really took off in Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like, right? Can anyone think of, like, an actual... Tier 1 meta deck that you liked? Like, not really. Code Talker was the closest thing, and that deck I would really say was like a what's it called? Oh, Goki's obviously the biggest example, true. Did Spyro U-Link? I don't think Spyro U-Linked, right? Spyro kind of mostly set up a ton of links, but I don't think it really U-Linked. So yeah, anyway, the reason is, like, I don't think Tri-Gate Wizard is power crept. It's just like, you know, it just doesn't have the deck that facilitates it as well anymore. Like, as soon as Konami decides to make another U-Link spam deck, which... Does anyone want that? No? Okay. Then it'll be staple, right? Like, that's just what will happen. If we get another super, like, Link spammy deck, it will just be staple.
Stranger to powerful generic cards influencing the game. Hell, GOAT players will convince you a format based on who can draw and recycle Pot of Greed first is a true expression of skill. But even back then, your generic cards were...
Why is he hating on Go? Like, what? Why are we just hitting drive-bys here, bro? We can't shit on Adamancipator, then shit on Goats. Like, looping Moth is one of the craziest skill caps in Goat format, okay? When you get that loop going and you've, like, played through or baited out your opponent's knock or something, or judgment, I'm telling you, that shit is fun. What do you say? You can't hate on everything.
Were not your deck's main game plan. Right, they were just the tools that got you there. I mean, you could play a deck of all Mirror Forces, but I run a 0 UR deck challenge, and even I wouldn't play this trash. Magic Cylinder Turbo is absolutely something coming, though, so be ready for that. Now, how...
Dude, I don't know what it is with Magic Cylinder, but, like, if you go on, like, my my YouTube Shorts, I think it has, like, 700,000 views or something. People are obsessed with those cards. This old school card nobody plays anymore. I think it's this. This guy's huge. No, that's that was Gore's. Which one is it? It's one of these that just has, like, a stupid amount of, like, high views. The stun one, stun also. People love stun, dude. People love stun. But yeah, one of my highest viewed shorts is freaking a Magic Cylinder short.
Let's take a look. The first sign of a shift was in the Synchro era. Regardless of the deck you played, most players...
My brother, you are a boomer. This is perfect. He is going all the way... This is an old man making this video, which is perfect because now we get, like, a nice, comfy, cozy history lesson. So get your freaking pencils out and start noting. Because I love when people give this lengthy, this far back of a context and a prelude to the game. So this is good.
made room for generic staple boss monsters like Goyo Guardian, Stardust Dragon, and Black Rose Dragon. The last one
You know, if you replace the G with a P in Goyo Guardian, it says Pollo, which is Spanish for chicken. So now it's like, imagine a level 6 synchro that guards chickens. Isn't that really funny? I made that up in my head.
Specifically was literally in every deck of this era. It had a 100% play rate. However, this era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is beloved by all besides the most staunch Yu-Gi boomers, and we just saw what kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! Appealed to them. But what
is this the La Prince meme from Twitter, by the way? I hate modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Wow, you have to play the same 20 cards in every deck. Look at this. Judgment, Graceful, Knock, VLS, Sangan, Tribe, Torrential, Mirror. God damn it. This is a classic right here. This is a classic meme.
Why is this? Because the generic monsters used were more of a toolbox. This word is thrown around a bit in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sphere,
exactly
and
what I
here's
was
where I'm
thinking
going to
about the
define
other
it
day.
in my opinion.
Okay, just to like give some context, TLDR, if you look at the history of Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially pre like 2017, maybe a little bit before that, to be honest, but like up until like 2014, I want to say, even 2014, the extra deck was never like your prime goal. It wasn't like, I'm going to spam all of these extra deck monsters out. And even if you did, and it was your game plan to spam a bunch of extra deck monsters, they were not reactive monsters. They were proactive monsters. What do I mean by that? It wasn't like Omni Negates and generic stuff like that. It was like guys that just like you sit on, you know, like Draco Sack, it just like kind of sat there, protected itself. You sat on a Zen mains. If you go into your extra deck, it's to like deal with problem cards. Your opponent has like a monster, you have to book him in it with a Maestro, you have to suck it up with an Honor Arc, etc., etc. Right? These were very proactive cards. Whereas now, like all of these boss monsters are just like, they don't really deal with the situation at hand. I mean, they can, but like, they were never like the end goal, it feels like. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of like a huge problem that kind of shifted around about 2013, 2014 era, I want to say.
Just like how you own a box of tools to deal with specific problems, your extra deck had monsters that could out specific boards and remove whatever your opponent had. This created a solid back and forth, with cards like Black Rose Dragon being amazing turn 2 board clearers and being countered by your opponent making Stardust Dragon. However, you could run over Stardust Dragon going second with cards like Goyo Guardian, but if your opponent has a battle trap, it stops that. Not to mention, making a level 8 turn 1 wasn't always immediately feasible, so what were you able to end on took a bit more understanding. Now, eventually, in the Synchro era, we did get turn 1 negates, but it was stuff like Quasar, which took pretty much your entire hand and deck to commit into, and even then, it was a single
for one negate, dude. Man, old school Yu-Gi-Oh, huh? This is the Baron de Floor for boomers, man. This is like Grandpa's walking stick boss monster. No one made this, by the way. This was a gimmicky deck. My history pre-2013 knowledge is not 100% accurate because I didn't play through that time period, but this was not like a good like deck. Like this was basically like a kind of a gimmick. It wasn't really like a serious contending threat. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this was never like, you know, hey, listen, this is the best deck. This is a meta threat. You know, it's kind of like, here's a strategy that you can kind of do in what, like Laval, someone's mentioning.
Omni Negate. So to make the equivalent of Baron back then, you needed 2 Synchro monsters and 1 Tuner Synchro monster. Hell, Baron's target pop effect probably makes it better than...
Dude, that's the thing that like pisses me so much about Baron. Why is it so generic? Like, ridiculously generic. It's just a level 10. That's any deck in the game that has like level 10 Synchro access can just make Baron. It's a standard. It's so dumb. I just hate how generic it is. Like, Savage Dragon, the fact that that thing doesn't require a rocket monster is criminal. Baron not requiring, like, a warrior or, like, a Fleur monster probably would make it unplayable, but, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, no one wants this shit to be, like, in every extra deck, right? It's just, it's ridiculous how, like, generic this is.
Quasar, just comparing effects because its
Yu-Gi-Oh!
OTK
Evolving
power
Match.
really
Yes,
isn't
I'm
helpful
furious.
these days.
It evolved
but what
too much.
is helpful is if you like
Go back.
this
We need
video
to go
and
back to
subscribe
Lizard
to the
Yu-Gi-Oh!
channel. You're almost at...
We need to go back when the Paleo era of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm not talking about the deck. I'm talking about, like, the fucking marine biological phenomenon. I want to go back to being a lizard man, where all I did was set a vanilla monster and look at my opponent and do lizard things like... That's lizard speak for main phase 1, okay.
At 3k and I can't wait to hit it. But for the Xyz era, it was much the same. We didn't really have insane going first boards with the exception of the worst card ever printed.
Oh yeah, remember
this
this
very
idiot?
critical of modern Yu-Gi-Oh, but I'd rather they...
Dude, can I show you guys like something shocking? Some of you like, haha, get it? Shocking? Hey! Streaming is a paying job. You should subscribe right now with Twitch Prime for some of these funny quips that you will be seeing constantly. Anyway, can I show you something really funny? Alright. This is like gonna absolutely terrorize or doom some of you. Some of you might not know this. Watch this. Okay. Has anyone here noticed the little face on Shockmaster? Dude, for years, I thought like this like orange thing was the eye. And this was like, I don't know, some sort of like claw thing or like some kind of beak thing. But actually, right at the very tip, it's just a whole ass face. Like, ugh, that's freaking weird, right? And it's funny how many people in chat right now are actually seeing it for the first time. Like, if you really focus on Shockmaster, you notice that stupid little face. Anyway, sorry, let's continue.
Unban any of these Link bastards before we unlock the shock. The best thing you could really make going first was something like Giant Hand, which was a 2K prize card, and Minerva, which was also a 2K prize card. I didn't say the format was affordable, I just said it was different.
It wasn't that expensive. Minerva, like, absolute highest maximum back contextually at the time was like $1,000, which is extremely cheap when you consider that the cheapest Minerva on card market is, let me show you. let me show you real quick how much you can pay for $1,000 got you an Ultra Minerva in 2017. You want to see what an Ultra Minerva is today? You want to see what an Ultra Minerva is today? 70 cents apparently. No, where's the prize card version? Someone go put this in their basket right now just to give the seller a heart attack. If you want an ultra rare Minerva, it's only 100,000 euros. So stonks if you bought one in 2016, just saying.
I didn't say the format was affordable, I just said it was different. What the Xyz era—
By the way, just like for the format was very affordable. This was like a good deck, it was viable, it was a meta deck, but you absolutely didn't need to play freaking Minerva Turbo to play that format. You had ABC was 3 structure decks, Meadowfoes I think was relatively cheap. Paleo, I think, was viable at the time, although that could be a couple months after. That might be Invasion Vengeance. But you had ABC... No, this wasn't Meadowfoes. This was Blue Eyes. Unironically, Blue Eyes was one of the best decks. Yeah.
What really increased was the power of Toolbox monsters. Number 101, Castel, Exciton Knight, and
my brother, you need to go on Waijo Pro Deck to get your card pictures. Like, just showing us a random Ghost Rare is, like, so cursed.
And if you really wanted to hit...
I didn't even know Honor Art came in Ghost Rare.
Over something hard, man, nobody did it better than Utopia the Lightning. While for the most part,
Oh, don't forget, real ones remember that Mega Capital G made a video 9 minutes discussing why Utopia the Lightning should be banned. Just remember that. Cap G said that Lightning was so good it should be banned. Yes, and he was right. Well, it was the moral sword of 2017, I guess.
These incredibly toolboxy eras were probably the closest we've ever gotten to a true fair side of the game, where going second isn't the end of the world. Obviously, in this era, things like Dragon Ruler still existed, but even then, the mirror is still quite skill-dependent and isn't super dependent on what goes first or second. Penned format was when you could really spiral into an insane amount of power going first, and spiral format was when we had gone too far. I think it would be a criminal underestimation to say Master Rule 4 and onwards, the speed of the game changed in a way we had never seen before. I have an entire video I want to make on Link summoning as a whole, so make sure you sub for that, but for now, what I want to highlight is a change in our generic going second cards. We started with main deck cards to deal with opponent stuff, then progressed into putting them mostly in the extra deck, and now we have moved back into our disruption coming from the main deck. This was the era that really popularized hand traps, which yes, Effect Veiler existed for a while now, but things like Ash Blossom, Ghost Ogre, and Nibiru had shifted the power of our disruption into these incredibly focused single-use modes.
There's like a big gap between these cards, admittedly. Like, I think Ghost Ogre and Nibiru is, what, like a 4-year gap? It wasn't until we did that podcast where I, like, kind of recently realized, like, wait a minute, Ghost Ogre was, like, was the first Ghost Girl. But people kind of forget about it because it just wasn't that good. It was good, it just had to be very specific, right? Like, it was only good against, like, a very specific, like, type of interaction, which is face-up continuous cards, and where removing a body was actually relevant. I think, like, Ghost Ogering, like, a Rap here was, like, pretty strong, I suppose, but that was about it. But there's, like, a big significant gap between these. I would say, like, the main hallmark is really Ash Blossom 2017 to, like, Nibiru 2019. That 2-year window of Link Vrains, you just had this, like, influx of hand traps and the proliferation of just so many different hand traps that the game became, well, you know, the big wombo combo fest that it became. And it had to have all of these cards, because how were you going to counteract all of this interaction and stuff?
Monsters. That's because we now pretty much commit most of our extra deck into building the most insane board your deck can muster. Extenders on extenders, monsters that summon from the main deck, and the final pieces that put up enough negates to stop anything and everything your opponent can throw at you. And the greatest offender of this philosophy is Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess. I despise this card with every fiber of my being, and I have zero idea how it's been allowed to be legal all this time. Realistically, think about the last 10 duels.
The quote-unquote negative and quote-unquote downside of Appaloosa is that you can attack over it, right? Is like the main argument for why Appaloosa is fair. I don't think that argument really sticks, to be honest with you, unless you have Fenrir, but, you know, that's a different question, because obviously Fenrir is the most broken card ever printed. But that's like the argument and defense of Appaloosa, is that you can just hit it really hard. And it just deletes like 2 negates, you know, like who would win, you know, 3 negates or like a guy with a sword, you know, like that's what it comes down to.
Where you or your opponent summon this card, it pretty much ends the game immediately, because there's 2 options. Your opponent is going to have a specific board breaker and win immediately because you committed half of your deck's resources to Appaloosa.
What do you mean Fenrir rant counter? What is a Fenrir rant counter? Shut the hell up. Dude, I'm not unjustified in this crap, okay? Fenrir is ridiculous. Do you understand, like, how stupid it is to just... Okay, right, never mind. I guess that puts the counter up to 2.
Is going to lose it.
Fenrir rant counter up to 2 in, like, 30 seconds.
Immediately, because with Engine and, like, 1 negate, they can't play through 3 to 4 monster negates and anything else you might have. Because every meta combo deck doesn't just end on Appo. It ends on Barone, Borreload Savage Dragon, or all 3 of them. This style of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is something that I thought for the last few years we had tried to distance ourselves of them.
I think it's, like, kind of ridiculous that we have, Look, by the way, look at this, like, the criminals. Like, actually, like, what is good about this field if you get rid of, like, the actual problem cards on the ban list? Like, I don't know. And it's, like, it's this such a paradoxical situation, because Konami have opened Pandora's box. And we're in a situation where that box has been opened, and that's the type of gameplay that we have currently. So, what do you do in this situation? Like, do you... just ban all of these cards and never design generic, like, NP boss monsters again? What do you end up with? The alternative, I think, is that you end up in a situation where you have, like, Magispector Nui as, like, your best monster, right? And I was thinking about this the other night, and it's a very good example. Because that card, for example, the Magispector Link 2, is fucked. It is, like, a... It's custom card, like, actual just windmill donking, like, thunder stomping deck ass, like, broken. It is so fucked. But it's very specifically locked into Magispectors. You have to be playing that deck. You can't run it in any other Pendulum deck. So the problem is that if you do that as your design methodology when it comes to making cards, is you just lock them to their respective archetypes, does the game become more fairer? Yeah, I think so. But in some ways it's more boring, right? Because now you can't come up with all of these, like, for better or for worse, whether you want to disagree or agree, whether you like needle fiber or not, it created, or it proved to be one of the most creative cards ever, right? I don't think there have been as many interactions created just from one Halka Fibrax that the community have come up with as Halka Fibrax, right? Now imagine if Halka Fibrax could only summon Crystron monsters and it required a Crystron as a material. That card would just have been dead on arrival, right? So there's 2 big conflicting ways to look at how you design extra deck monsters. You make Magispector News, or you make Savage Dragons and Needle Fibers, right? Like, that's where do you go from there? What is the balance? What is the middle ground? Should there even be a middle ground? Is there even a Venn diagram for these type of cards? I don't think so.
This style of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is something that I thought for the last few years we had tried to distance ourselves from after the Link era of 40-minute combo nonsense. And I see when Konami tries to make mid-range formats focused around specifically unique boss monsters.
Bro, honestly, like, I would just say, like, as much as I hate, like, the player base, we need to bring back bullying. As much as I hate, like, you know, the community behind it, mostly, but you can't say that Branded isn't one of the most like best designed decks ever in this game, right? There's no hard negates. There's multiple different interesting types of interactions. Like, I guess like Mercurier is like the closest thing, right? Technically, it's pretty well balanced and well designed. It's a pretty well made deck. It's fair. It's interactive. Yes, guys, Puppet Lock. I know. Listen, every deck has like some kind of dumb bullshit combo. But for the most part, like if you actually play against Branded, like they are interactive games. They are pretty like reasonable duels. Like, I will tell you, like, games against Branded that I've played that don't involve the Puppet Lock have genuinely been pretty good back and forth duels of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? So as much as I hate on this shit, it's honestly one of the most well-designed decks in the game.
Come to life, and it's
although Branded Fusion definitely needs, like, you know, some adjustments, right? I think, like, Foolish Burial for anything in your deck was obviously a little bit problematic, but overall, I think mostly the deck is, like, fairly well-designed.
Interesting. And while you and I might not like the
this, on the other hand, this fucking guy,
specific boss monsters that shape that individual format, I think we can all appreciate not having to stare down the same handful of boss monsters every time we go to locals. Because
I would rather stare down Apollosa, Baron, Savage, Masquerena than ever look at an Arise Heart again. I will take those 4 monsters. Like, let's say, like, every single duel I play in Yu-Gi-Oh!, my opponent activates like a dueling skill, and it's like, begin your duel with Savage, Apollosa, Masquerena. I will take that over ever having to look at a fucking Arise Heart again.
Because what these cards do for the most part is ruin the amazing ideas and mechanics of so many decks. For example, in Adamancipator, you literally excavate the earth to find rocks to build your board with. In
doesn't sound... Okay, I just want to say, thematically, that sounds like the most boring... I've never heard someone make Adamancipator sound so fucking dull. Imagine explaining to a new Yu-Gi-Oh player. Okay, so the theme of Adamancipator is you dig the dirt looking for rocks. Oh, yeah, sign me up, dude. Wow. You know, we're talking about like Branded lore with like this freaking like space being that crash lands on the planet and turns into a dragon and then has a war with like some other like freaking like cult organization. No. Let me show you this deck, Adamancipator. You dig the dirt for rocks. Like, make a deck sound boring, dude. Holy crap.
In Adamancipator, you literally excavate the earth to find rocks to build your board with. In Monadium, you crush your balls and weave through an interconnected story of different worlds and people to make your boss monsters as well. And with Spiral, you literally spy on your opponent's cards to gain intel and set up your espionage. But with all of these...
That's not wrong. It was just a picture of like Meek on the field. That was the joke. But holy crap, yeah. But that's definitely a theme. Yeah, that's Monadium. That's the theme of Monadium.
These unique and amazing ideas, it's such a shame that the best way to play them for the most part is to spam out the generic boss monsters mentioned before as fast as possible. It feels like such a waste to design all these cool concepts when you are mostly ignoring them because they aren't as good as saying no to your opponent 5 times. Now maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Could be so much better if we banned all of these, but there is one caveat I want to mention. Barone is a strange...
Can I just say that we're over halfway through this video, and as funny as this is, he hasn't actually really offered any solutions. I feel like now we're getting to it where maybe it's just like, I don't know, ban them, which I guess, but I think we need to say a little bit more than just ban them, I don't like them, right?
One. In some decks like Sword Soul, it plays the supplementary piece of negation.
God, I love Sword Soul. Whoa, what game is that? That's not Macedon. Weird skin.
You still win the game with the Sword Soul starters and boss monsters 99% of the time, it's just there to help. I think these cards are at their best when it's made something like that, because this is not a hate video on generic cards as a concept, because I think it's an amazing way to work it, and I think the best way to make a generic boss monster is Zeus. Zeus is one of the best designed cards in the last few years, an insanely powerful removal tool that gives all Xyz decks some potential to break a board going second without having to draw a specific out. This is the peak of generic support, and I hope in the future this is what Yu-Gi-Oh! Pivots to, and less about this.
It's kind of weird, like, I feel like Typhon really missed the mark. I think, like, Nuclear Take, I think Typhon should have not stopped you from summoning for the rest of the turn. Like, you should just be allowed to just slap that bitch onto, like, any other card, just bounce. Like, I straight up, like, I think that card could have been even better. I think it should have been better. Real talk. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, I would love to have seen that card just be even more powerful. We still have those Zodiacs to make the funny space robot. Yeah, okay, sure. Awful take? Really? You think so? Well, that's my nuclear take for today, alright? You get one per day.
I mentioned before how the extra deck is mostly just combo extenders and boss monsters, but for the last 5%, this is a perfect example of great and awful design in Yu-Gi-Oh! A card like Underworld Goddess, in my opinion, is fantastic design, absurd removal at an insane cost for you, and any amount of...
Okay, you got... Dude, I'm just like... I'm just... You know the, they hated him because he spoke the truth thing? This is me today. I mean, you guys want to hear another nuclear take? Underworld Goddess should have been a Link 4. And then they can drop the materials down to 3+. They should have just made it like one less. That would have been insane. That would have been sick. That would be so good. But they would have to ban Masquerena. And I'm just... Listen, again, Coomers will hate me for saying this, but Masquerena should be banned. Explain? Well, it just makes it easier to link away your opponent's monster. You make it a Link 4, which means you can use 3 materials worth of monsters plus 1. I guess maybe you'd have to make it 2+ effect monsters, minimum. No, 3+ is good, right? Yeah, 3+ is good, so then it's more bodies you need. Yeah, I think it should just been one less ranking, or link rating.
Disruption your opponent has.
Bro, I'm telling you, anything to make Go Second insane, I'm down for. Absolutely. Dude, imagine you could, like, Appaloosa, link away your opponent's boss monster, slap a Typhon on top of it, bounce something else. Bring back Going Second, dude. Going Second is the most fun thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! At its best. Right now, it's freaking miserable. Miserable experience to go second in Yu-Gi-Oh!
As can prevent her from being summoned to the board.
So more
and
Fenris?
then there's Accesscode, a card that effectively removed the concept of major...
Whoa. What does he have to say against Accesscode? What's wrong with Accesscode?
Then there's Accesscode, a card that effectively removed the concept of major weaknesses for meta decks. Accesscode and Boral Sword, for a smaller degree, was when Konami basically gave up on the idea that some decks might have a better ability to OTK than others. Recoverability...
I mean, he ain't wrong, though. He ain't wrong. Like, Boral Swords? Again, why the hell does that not require a rocket? Accesscode? Like, you take a deck that has, like, a weakness, quote-unquote, like a combo deck. Like, maybe a couple of its pieces gets cracked. It doesn't have that much follow-up. Boom. Make a Nightmare Unicorn, spend their last card, link up into an Accesscode. As long as you have 27, you've got OTK. I think making OTKs like significantly easier with those two cards was definitely a mistake. It's weird, right? I feel like combo decks shouldn't be able to OTK so easily. Right? Because like the trade-off in my opinion is like, okay, well, you're gonna dominate and swarm the field turn 1, but then you also just get to one-shot your opponent turn 2. It's like, what's the weakness, right? It's like the weakness therefore then comes into the outs that people draw with their hand traps, etc., etc. But that's like a really bad weakness. Like, I mean bad weakness in the sense of like it doesn't really create fun games. Because then it puts you in a situation where you basically gotta draw it, right? Because that's what the issue is when you deal with like a crazy wombo combo infield. It's like, you can't outskill that sometimes. Right? A lot of the time. There's no outplay with like an Adamancipator board. You just have to draw the card. So I think that's like, that does... Yeah, so just giving them an OTK tool after they've just established all of that just makes it even easier for them to win. So there's just no drawback when a combo deck is good. There's literally no drawback. Well, the drawback is that your games essentially become dice rolls and coin flips, which is why those decks historically have always had terrible mirror matches, right?
Is a cool skill for a deck to have, especially mid-range and control builds, but it's difficult to implement in the modern game because you won't have a chance to recover if you die turn 2 to these assholes. In a strange way, they simplify aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the worst way possible, and are sort of the second half to why Yu-Gi-Oh! Has the stereotype that all the games end in 2 turns. You either end on a ton of negates, or slam them through and OTK your opponent. Now to be clear, this is not indicative of every format and every style. I think we can all agree on that. But these decks reinforce that notion till this very day. And I think the best way moving forward is to give decks back their identity and to bring back more of a back and forth. So please, we should ban Appaloosa. This would not only fix all the
That was an interesting conclusion. We were kind of going somewhere, you know, we got to bring back interaction, we got to bring back and forth, we got to slow down the game. By the way, ban Appaloosa. If this was me making this video, I would have said the exact same thing, but then just slap the Fenrir here instead.
general problems mentioned before, but this would also be a great hit to Snake Eyes.
Which, by the way, Fenrir is a going first tool as well. Holy, it just clicked again. It's not even about going second. You could just summon Fenrir going first and then do the rest of your like, it's ridiculous.
That came out a few months ago, so we know Konami's not going to hit it hard anytime soon.
Four Fenrir runs
besides Snake Eyes, but if your deck is nothing without Apollosa,
man, I've been live for like an hour. We have 4 Fenrir runs.
Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe. This is Bread Boy Weeb, signing out.
All right, make sure you go subscribe to Bread Boy Weeb. What a freaking name! All right, that was a very good video. That was genuinely a good watch. Yeah. So TLDR. Thoughts and prayers. Again, it's kind of like that middle rant I had in the middle of the video, where it's like, you know, you have 2 polar opposite extreme design directions that you can have with boss monsters. You can have like Magispector Nui, which has this very, like, you know, xenophobic lock, or you have like, you know, Apollosa Baron, etc., etc. How do you bring these 2 together somewhat in the middle and create an interactive game from that? It's very difficult to think of cards that fulfill all of these niches quite well. So you know, I think that's like the biggest design goal, I think, is to like create something interesting, fun and unique for your deck, like Magispector Nui, but also generic enough, like Needle Fiber, not as generic, but, and not as powerful, but something that can create, something that can encourage creativity. Because I don't think like, so, you know, the biggest problem with something like Magispector Nui, for example, is that it's extremely limiting, right? There's no creativity there. Like, decks like that just build themselves, right? Which is a big problem with a lot of modern Yu-Gi-Oh decks, right? Like, why is Sword Soul, for example, the same deck every single format, right? Exact same thing. Exact same thing. There's just no room for player expression in those type of decks. So that's like the trade-off, I guess. You balance the game, but you also, you know, you make it kind of boring to some extent. Anyway, good video.